let's see. All right, yeah, George is saying, could you please review the trailing options for entries? Yeah, you bet. I'll do a simple example that I think, yeah, that everybody can understand. This is one that I will typically do in a sales webinar as well, just because it's a simple concept, and it explains trailing your entries very simply. So, all right, so let's close out this S&P chart, and all right, so we're on I've got an oil chart here, and let's see. Let me switch to a range chart. All right, so I'm going to put a moving average on the chart, and we'll trail the entry order. We'll trail it by a moving average. So let's see here. Yeah, the EMA is the first one on here. So we'll just do an EMA, and I'll knock it down to whatever, 21, something a little faster. And all right, so there we go. We have a moving average that we can attach our entry order to trail it. All right, next thing I need to do is switch my data feed, and there we go. All right, I'll move the market. I'll let the market trend up slowly while I build this here. Okay, so let's move this down. All right, well, you can see I have the strategies tab open here on NinjaTrader's Control Center. So if I wanted to, I could just enable it right there, because I already have BlackBird loaded on the chart. All right, so there we go. We got BlackBird up and running. And let's open up the order settings here. And just let me pull this down a little bit there. All right, so yeah, let's open up the order settings window. And let's see. So I'm moving the market up above this moving average. So I will set up a limit order and wait for a pullback, right? A pullback to the moving average. All right, so let's go into the order sets here, and we'll start off with a limit. All right. And yeah, a little side note here, when you are attaching your entry order to an indicator, right? One of the issues that you'll encounter when using indicators is that indicators can be on the wrong side of the market, right? Or price, yeah, basically the indicator is on the wrong side of the market, for the long or short trade that you're trying to take. So for entry orders, we have this option here to automatically, or enable automatic order type selection. And you'll see when I check that, the type becomes either a stop/limit. So BlackBird, that allows BlackBird to decide, well, should your order be a limit order or should it be a stop order, depending on what side of the market your order is going to be, right? And so, of course, if you're using an indicator, that's very handy, because if you tried to go long, down here where my mouse is at, if you tried to go long down here, well, my moving average is on the wrong side of the market for a limit order. So BlackBird would convert that limit order to a stop order instead and replace the stop order there. So I'll just check this just for good measure here. And so next we want to go into the initial placement, and instead of setting our order to a bar price, we're going to use an indicator value to set the entry order's price. All right, so let's go into the indicators, and let's select the EMA. There we go. And let's see, I changed it to a 21. All right, change it to 21, like so. There. All right, so there's our initial placement is at the EMA 21. So next we need to go to the trailing actions tab, and we're going to change the mode to custom. And now we can hit the add trailing rule button here. All right, and let's give this a name here. So I'll call it follow the EMA 21, like so. So entry order trailing is usually very straightforward. You know, there's typically no delay, no trigger required. It's just, you know, let's just move that entry order right away. So we just need to go into the action here, right? We're going to go move to, and then in here, the move to, again, we want to change it from price to an indicator value. And so we'll go in here, select our EMA again, and put in the right period. So there you go, period 21 there. And the last step here is to go into the repeat, and we want to repeat indefinitely. And there we go. So that's it. So there's just two key components here. You know, your initial placement, set it to whatever indicator you're using, and then in the trailing actions, enable it, and then add a trailing rule, and then just go to the actions. So the action is what sets the new price at which you're going to move your order to, and just set the action to whatever indicator you want to use, and then set your repeat, you know, to indefinitely, or whatever type of repeating you might want. So, all right, so let's click OK, and so if I go long, there we go. So we have a limit order sitting right there on that EMA. And yeah, we just saw it trail up there. Yeah, I'll create a couple more bars so we can watch this limit order trail up. There we go, just moved again. All right, let me pause the trend. And I'm going to close this out. Now if I go short, then you'll see, let's see, yeah, it says auto selected, but you'll see that this, if we look at our orders, if I go to our orders tab on the control center, you'll see it is a stop type of order, right? It's a stop entry. So a stop market in this case. And if you want to use a stop limit instead of a stop market order, let's open up the order type here. So we want to go to the options tab here. We want to go right to the type. And if we open up the type, here we can see there's a stop market or a stop limit. All right, so you can select which type of stop entry order you want to use there. All right. Yeah, let me. I'll close out one more bar here, and we'll see our stop order should tick up another tick with that EMA. There we go. There. All right. sometimes it's hard to grab that trend and move it up. There we go. Okay, so yeah, here I'll leave this open here while I take a look at the question window. There you go. Okay, so let's see see if we have any follow-ups here. All right, yeah. So George is saying, so George would like to see a trailing option after a bloodhound signal fires. So trailing is trailing. Trailing has nothing to do with bloodhound signals. Yeah. So if you're hooking in bloodhound, hooking bloodhound into your trade signals here, that has nothing to do with order trailing, right? Order trailing is just going to start trailing as soon as the order's placed. Question here, this trailing roll. So as we started with, right, we're placing a stop entry order 2 ticks above the close, and basically this entry is kind of it's a counter trend entry, and so right, so what's being assumed is that a long bloodhound signal will come in, but the market may still continue to move downward, and so they want the entry order to also move downward if the market keeps moving down for a few more bars. So after a 1 bar delay, then if new lows are continuing to be made, so we're going to use the trigger event, and we're going to use price versus indicator, and so we're going to use this to check if new lows are being made, right? So on each new bar after the entry order is placed, if a new low is made, then we want to move that that entry order lower and lower and lower. So, all right. So so what we're going to do is we're going to check the. So again, this is a counter trend trade. So for a long, so when taking a long, if a new low is made, so if price keeps, basically if the bars keep moving lower and lower, we want the entry order to keep moving lower and lower. Right. So we're going to check the low price of the current bar. So a look back period of 1 would be the current bar. And then we're going to go into input B, and we don't want an indicator, we want to go to price, and again we're going to check the low of 1 bar back. So a look back of 2 means the previous bar back. All right. And so again, if we're taking a long trade, if A is below B, right? So remember, input A, that's the current bar's low, and B is 1 bar back, 1 bar behind input A's low, right? So if the current A being the current bar's low, if it's below B, which is 1 bar's back low, then that's our condition for moving the entry order down even further. And so for the short, we want to reverse this. So that'll be reversed, A above B. All right, now the action, what they're doing is they're placing that stop entry order on the bar's high. So they're taking the bar's high plus a tick. So 1 tick above the bar's high. Let's see if I got, so here we go. Let's take a look at these down bars here as an example here. Right, so these bars are making new lows, right? Even this up bar being a new low. So as new bars are making new lows, we want the entry order to be resting right above the high of the bar that just made a newer low. Right? So when this bar here that has the red arrow, right, it made a newer low, and so we want that entry order to sit one tick above the high of that bar. Right? So this is allowing price to come down, and then when price is finished doing its little pullback, then when price continues, reverses direction and moves back up, then eventually price is going to move back up and hit that stop entry order and pick it up, and away we go. All right. Most likely, you want the allow movement to be against direction only. Right? Actually, leaving it on both directions would work, but what is wanted is so that, again, if a long signal comes in, right? If a long signal comes in, we're continuing to pull that entry order down. So pulling the entry order down goes against the direction of the Bloodhound signal, right? So Bloodhound placed a long signal, right, for a long trade, but we're pulling the entry order down, which is in the opposite direction of the trade. So that would be against the direction. So, all right, and then repeat. And I believe you wanted a limited number of repeats here. So I think it was something like 8 or 10. Sorry, so this trailing roll is to only repeat 8 or 10 times. But then also what you'll want to do is select this only repeat when re-triggered, right? Because remember, your requirement, one of the requirements for pulling that entry order down is for a new low to be made, right? So in other words, this trigger event, you only want to repeat when this trigger event becomes true on every bar, right? So normally, the way the repeat works is, the way trailing rules work is the initial delay needs to have passed, right? So the initial delay requirements need to have passed, so it becomes a true event. So whatever requirements you have here, all those requirements need to be true. Then your trigger event needs to be true, and once these two things have occurred, then the action happens, and then the repeat will keep repeating. But if you only want the action to repeat only when the trigger becomes true on every single bar. So in other words, if you want the trigger event to be tested on every single bar, that is what this only repeat when re-triggered. All right, so in other words, the trigger has to become true again on every single bar before the repeat will repeat itself. Right? So I guess so in regards to this trailing rule, enabling this means that if there is no new low, then the trailing rule doesn't re-trigger, right? So in other words, the order will not move if there's not a new low. Yeah, so there we go. So that would be it. And so let's see, I think, in the trigger event, this is all pretty straightforward. The one key to remember is that for input B, you want to set your look back period to 2 so that you're looking back 1 extra bar. So you're looking at the low price of 1 bar further back, right? All right, so let me pause there and see if there's any follow-up questions on this. And okay, oh good, all right. Yeah, so George says that they were not checking the repeat only. All right, yeah. So again, only repeat option there. Yeah, again, that just verifies that there's a new low before the repeat allows the action to repeat. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, my understanding from Roger is that this whole order was just not triggering at all. So that's why I considered it a tech support problem. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, and also, keep in mind, guys, when you see options like this, all this stuff is up in our documentation here. So let's see here. If we go to help and go to documentation, so that way you don't have to wait to the end of the week to figure this stuff out. So if you the kind of person that likes to read documentation. All right, so there you go. So BlackBird opened up its documentation section here, and we're going to go down to the order sets here, right? So all this trailing action is inside this order set here, right? So you see this little dark box, right? All the options inside this dark box is a part of the order set. So we're going to go to the order set page right here. Click on that. And we'll scroll down here. All right, so here's information on the options tab. And now here's the trailing actions tab. So if we scroll down a little further, yeah, so here we go. So here's the repeat component of the trailing rules, and then the very bottom option here, only repeat when retriggered. So there, if you open that up, there's a simple little written explanation of what it does. So there. Yeah, so if you're kind of curious of what some of these other repeats, how they work and whatnot, there it's in there. And let's see, George is asking, and none of those trailing events is affected if you are using a bloodhound signal. So that depends. That depends on where you're using your bloodhound signal. So if you're using bloodhound up here in the trade signals area, then no, absolutely not. So this section up here in the middle, this is your trade signals. So this is what tells BlackBird, when to take a trade, right? These bloodhound signals, if you're using bloodhound up here, that's telling BlackBird when to place a trade. All right, those are your trade signals that are coming in. Now, if you're using bloodhound in the trailing actions, all right, because one of the trigger events is a bloodhound signal. So, right, so of course, if you're using a bloodhound signal in your trailing rule, then that should be pretty obvious that there's a direct effect, right? So you can have a trailing rule wait until a bloodhound signal comes in, and then the trailing rule will start doing its thing, right? Have a good weekend, everybody. And again, reminder, if you have questions for these workshops, feel free to email those in anytime, right? You don't have to wait for the morning of the workshop. You can email them in at any time, and we will just put your questions on hold for these workshops. So, if you have questions that come up over the weekend, feel free to email us then when that question's fresh in your mind, and we'll hold on to it for the end of the work. We'll hold on to it until the workshop. So, okay, guys, have a good weekend, and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.